Hi, my name is David Sadler, and this is my video project for metacognition. My final project, I'm going to focus on chapter 8, which is law and eyewitness accuracy. I found this chapter to be unique. I liked when this book kind of focused on something that was a little different than some of the other chapters. One of them, for instance, was when they were trying to talk about like special needs and some of the learning challenges that we have when we talk about other mental disabilities and stuff like that. So when this chapter was focusing on law, I immediately kind of got interested in kind of like where that chapter was going to take me. I'm going to focus on two specific topics that I noticed in this particular chapter. The first one being witness confidence. When we kind of like talk about that, I never really considered some of the legal things like going in and how jurors and people can make decisions based on witnesses and maybe how their confidence levels can be manipulated or changed, and how that affects how jurors could call a case. And the witness confidence section was really interesting to me. So one thing that I did find really interesting was the fact that they talked about manipulation, and how that could be a factor in affecting a witness's level of confidence, and when they're recalling and making statements, and maybe a visual statement, maybe somebody out of a lineup or something like that. And I think it's kind of cool to think about how lawyers have the ability to manipulate situations. That's what they're specialists at, and can almost convince you of a situation or a fact that may or may not have happened. They can convince a witness, and they can also convince a juror, and they kind of play that game. So was kind of an interesting take on that chapter to see how that plays into fact. I found a cool reference point from Mixed Wicked. It's called Initial Eyewitnesses Confidence Reliability Predicts Eyewitness Identification Accuracy. Um, and something that I found to be interesting out of that document that felt like it correlated our book was it was talking about a recent example. December 2nd, 2013, article in the Washington Post observed that eyewitness misidentifications played a role in the majority of more than 300 convictions that had been overturned because of DNA evidence since 1989. Um, and that, I think, is probably on the rise ever since 2013. I think ever more so that we find that DNA kind of supersedes um, the some of these cases that can go back and change some people's jail time from years past. And also on that, a detailed analysis of those DNA exoneration cases revealed that more than 70% involved eyewitness misidentifications. There were misidentifications that were virtually always made with high confidence in the court of law. So even though there's saying express the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. The Dunlosky, the metacognition book, kind of talked about that as well, saying like that isn't, that's the simplest of all forms of them saying that this could be incorrect. That's not a very easy statement to make, saying the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Um, Another example out of this article that I found, they said, despite the unreliability of eyewitness memory, research has shown that jurors find high confidence eyewitnesses' identifications to be particularly compelling evidence of guilt. Um, and in Scientific American article entitled "Why Science Tells Us Not to Rely on Eyewitness Accounts," eyewitness testimony is fickle and all too shockingly inaccurate. That was Arkowitz and Littlefield in 2010. Underscored this point. For example, jurors tend to give more weight to the testimony of eyewitnesses who report that they are very sure about identifications, even though most studies indicate that highly confident eyewitnesses are generally only slightly more accurate, and sometimes no more so than those that are less confident. So I think that that level of confidence does, in fact, it can influence jurors' opinions. If you're overly confident, and you are, overestimating your recollection and recall abilities, then you're definitely going to um, present yourself in a confident manner, but may in fact not actually be any more confident than anyone else. So it is an interesting take on it, and I found that to be very interesting. When you kind of go through this chapter, it feels like I'm sitting in a Law and Order TV episode, and you know, you're just trying to break apart a case and figure out who's lying and who's not lying, and it was just kind of an interesting approach to it. The second part of this chapter that I wanted to kind of briefly go over was the lying and detection. I think a lot of us just kind of immediately associate polygraph testing to, you know, lie detector testing. And I think this definitely made a cool point about, you know, that those are not entirely accurate either. Are we actually able to be lie detectors, and to find, you know, find that out? I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on this one. I do think it depends on the person, and I think you're able to train yourself to A, on either side, be perceptive and to understand human body language in high stress situations. But I also think people are trained in the opposite and can easily convince you and themselves that they are telling the truth. So a cool article I found was from Lena Cisco. The book was "You're Lying: Secrets from an Expert Military Interrogator to Spot Lies and Get the Truth." This definitely took the approach of, you know, CIA spies, military, people who are held in, you know, confinement, and they're being interrogated probably much at a higher level than probably just a normal court case. But when I connected it to kind of that military side of it, I really started thinking about, you know, how relevant that is. Because in this book, she says anyone working for the government, whether as a civilian, a contractor, or a member of the military, they have to first take a polygraph test to obtain them to maintain a specific type of security clearance to see whether they can be trusted by safeguarding our nation's secrets. So that is to identify people who can and cannot pass polygraph tests. So they're trying to find people who have the ability to say, yes, I understand how to take a polygraph test, and I can basically pass it, with even having the ability to lie about it. So it's showing that there is an ability for you to fool the polygraph test. And part of her book, it is kind of outlining that and kind of going in and saying how they're able to manipulate that, how the cortisol levels are able to be controlled. And some individuals are able to do that and some are not. So some people who are applying for military or government jobs at that highest level of security clearance won't get a job, mainly because they're unable to pass the polygraph testing, just how their body is wired. So another interesting fact in there was she discussed a well-trained body language experts can see physiological responses to stress in the body without the use of a polygraph machine. We can see people flushing, sweating, turning pale, veins bulging, spit pooling in the mouth, hard swallowing, rapid eye blinking, and much more. The advantage of being a human lie detector is that we baseline people's normal behavior when they are comfortable first, so that we can see at what point in the conversation these physical appearances start to change. We also study the entire body from the head to the feet, or facial micro expressions, gestures, postures, poses, as we conduct statement analysis simultaneously. They're getting a much more full package interpretation of how they're handling the situation. And these experts I feel, are probably more accurate than people who are able to go through and just take the polygraph test. So they were saying too that the polygraph test in itself kind of felt like it was almost like an outdated, sorry, my lights just went out, an outdated method of lie detection. So it was just a really interesting chapter. I liked the change of focus from kind of like hardcore research. It really focused on kind of real world application, how it affects the legal system and jurors, and how people can convince themselves of maybe facts and manipulating the information. So I did find it very interesting, and I'm going to share a slide of some references of what I found, either out of Dunlofsky and Metcalf Metacognition, Lena Sisko, The Lying Secrets from an Expert Military Interrogator, and I also found a little bit of detail from Mikkels Wixted. Its initial eyewitness confidence reliability predicts eyewitness identification accuracy. So I will share this last slide with y'all by doing a screen share. And other than that, that is all that I have. I'll end the presentation with the reference slide. So let's get that up.